And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
Yo, Lord Willin, Jeff Canarsie, Mob Talk Radio. Check it out. Yo, we stay quiet like Russell Buffalino when things will get ugly like Pepsi's death in Casino. Who do we know? No one, nobody. But we're all well respected like Della Croce and Gotti. I know wild nights, Havana nocturne. Light up a cigar and watch your spot burn. You'll get patty whacked, I'm tough like Irish dock workers. Run with guys, hooligans and block lurkers. Corner berserkers, street savvy soldiers. You better pay. Don't make me say I told you. Code you don't betray, I say what I mean. Providence and Brooklyn all the way to the bean. I'd rather be unseen, like Vinny the Chin. I don't gotta go to Vegas to see cities of sin. Pull the pin, drop bombs like Danny Green. I write homicide like the murder machine. Lansky Luciano, mastermind the racket. Up in the clam house with a million in my jacket. Move around when the streets get darker. Pay homage to real bosses like Gambino and Patriarcha. Mob talking, but you don't talk to the mob. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, we stay on our job. This is Mob Talk, straight from the streets. Mob Talk, the life over beats. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, bringing you the real. Kill all rats, you already know the deal. This is Mob Talk, straight from the streets. Mob Talk, the life over beats. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, bringing you the real. Kill all rats, you already know the deal.
And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Canarsie, and we've got a very interesting show today. We're going to cover Anthony Mirra. We're going to do a Q&A, and we're going to talk about something else. And there's something else I'm going to talk about now. Normally, I do typically a 12 to 14-minute introduction, then I go to commercial break, whatever you want to call it, and I come back and get into whatever else. We're also going to cover a little hate mail today. Here's the thing. I seem to be getting a lot of messages from both sides of the fence on this. And the both sides of the fence is simply this. There are those who absolutely fucking hate me. Fine, no problem there. Then there are those who absolutely love me and like what I do, and that's fine. What I need people to understand is that I really don't give a fuck what anybody really thinks. I really don't. If you think I lose sleep at night because you don't like me ranting, you're out of your mind. A lot of people don't like the rants. They think that this show should be the historical references of the mafia or whatever it is, and that I should just stick to that and not rant and be personable and whatever else. For the people that do say that, I'm going to say this. It's my fucking show. I'm going to do what I want. And if you don't particularly like what I do, either fast forward it or don't listen. I'm not here to please people. I'm here to do what makes me happy, do what I enjoy. If you don't like that part of it, then just scan through it. Just fast forward through the shit. You don't have to listen to it. And the other thing is this, and I've said this at length for the last 3 years. I will defend people that I consider my friends. I will defend people that I consider to be good people. I will defend those that are getting railroaded by the federal government. Because it does happen. And I'm not going to stop doing that. Whether you like it or not, you can live in whatever fantasy land you want, but I'm not going to stop doing that. A part of what makes my show entertaining is the fact that I talk to people like they're sitting next to me, and I will defend my friends and defend friends of friends. And I don't, a lot of people think I have this ego about shit. I really don't. If you met me in person, you'd realize there's no pretense here with me. I just call it right down the middle from a street perspective, and that's the way it is. People will disagree with me. I don't really give a fuck about that. So that's what brings me to sort of this next thing, which is Philip Narducci. Okay, so last week Philip was arrested, indicted, several counts, all under one predicate act, which is, it's not a RICO act, but it's basically extortion, and more or less what the feds are alleging is that Philip Narducci put a $20,000 loan on the streets. Eventually, that loan balloons to $115,000 because the guy's not fucking paying. The guy's wearing a wiretap. Eventually, allegedly, according to Victim A, which basically means anytime they call him Victim A, he's a fucking rat. He pretty much wiretapped or wore a body wire and tape-recorded conversations and et cetera, et cetera. To what extent those truly go, we obviously, the feds are not going to hand it all out now. And apparently, allegedly in this indictment, Philip Narducci hired someone else or got somebody else to take over collecting the payments by a guy by the name of Jimmy Gallo, who apparently tried to extort and collect money. And when the money was not paid, there were threats that ensued. And basically, this cocksucking rat bastard ran to the FBI, which is what they all do. I would speculate at this point that legitimately any payoffs that this guy was giving, because the indictment lays out $600 payments, $600 payments, $1,000 payments, I would allege at this point that the FBI probably gave him the money to pay just to get somebody on a wiretap. Now, that's what the indictment is. I know that Philip had a bond hearing this morning. I don't know what the result of that is. I'm not a fucking magician, and I'm trying to stay out of that as much as I can. I don't think it helps anybody with me poking my fucking face at a trial like this or a bond hearing. I've got no business being there. It's none of my business. And that's the way that I think it's going to stay. Now, moving past the indictment for a minute. First of all, Philip's looking at 20 years. If they can prove the allegations are true, which I have a couple of points I'm going to argue, and then I'm going to get really at what I'm pissed at. The first thing is that Philip was a success regardless of what allegations are. Philip did a lot of time, gets out on the streets, establishes good businesses with his wife. Everything's going well. It's legitimate stuff. Anybody that's been to Chicks or anybody that knows Philip knows it was legitimate business. There's no bullshit and funny stuff going on there. But it's once again a systematic thing of you cannot be a productive member of society. The FBI is not going to allow you to be. If anybody has any success, it can't be because they're just highly motivated and highly intelligent. It's got to be some illegal shit. That's the way the FBI is. That's the way they always will be. I've seen it done a million times to a million different people. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to ask yourself why somebody who is a success at A, B, and C would even waste their time on a $20,000 fucking loan. Because reality is, like, why put yourself in that position? That's why I don't believe it. And then you have somebody who is caught, allegedly, according to the FBI, on a wiretap using his name. That's another thing. And what I cannot wrap my fucking head around for the life of me is why anybody, first of all, your reputation, if you have a street reputation, your reputation precedes you. I hate to mention a rat, Greg Scarpa. Everybody knew who Greg was. You didn't need to preface if you owed money to Greg and Greg was coming. You didn't need to preface his name. Everybody knew who the guy was. In this situation, regardless of his past or his present, Philip Narducci is a known individual in a lot of different circles. So if the reputation that Philip allegedly has is one who's not going to fuck around, who wants his fucking money, why do you need to preface Philip's name in a wiretap? That's what I don't understand. Now, I have not seen verbatim the wiretap or the taped conversations. Of course, all the news outlets and obviously the indictment is just throwing in one line or two to sort of pad the government's case. But if it's true that Gallo used his name, why would you do that? Why on God's earth would you use somebody's name? I don't know if that's particularly honestly the fucking case. I don't know. But I can tell you that if that is the case, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. You just can't mention people. It's as simple as that. And so we'll see how that kind of irons out. I'm not blaming Gallo, not blaming Narducci, not blaming the fucking rat, because there's going to be more that's going to come out. But what I can tell you is it seems very apparent to me that this was a setup from beginning to end. Guy wanted to borrow money, allegedly, didn't want to pay. What did he think was going to happen? So it's like I don't feel bad for the alleged victim in this if these allegations are remotely true, which I don't think they are. But as we move forward, we're gonna hear more about it, and we'll talk more about it. But I can tell you just from looking at it, it's if this is what the FBI has, this is very soft, and I think it's a bigger sort of introduction to what is going to be coming to Philly within the next month and a half or two. I think there's a bigger indictment coming, obviously. I think everybody who's sort of in the know kind of expects that to happen. But if this is the measly shit that the FBI is going to pull out of their ass to arrest somebody to get them out of the way to go after other people, it's almost like they're grasping at straws in a way. So That being said, we'll keep you up to date with what goes on with that. But like I said, I've seen a lot of indictments, and your fucking gremlins, George Anastasia and Dave Ratweiser, who I'm really going to lay into in a second. They seem to have the opinion that this is an open and shut case. He's going to go away. Blah blah blah. Fuck them. They say that about fucking everybody. They said that about Joey Merlino in the fraud case. Oh, it's a really strong case. He's going to go away for 30 fucking years. And then amazingly, when they dropped the fraud charges, all of a sudden they said, well, the case was really weak. And so it's like these guys play both sides of the fence. Journalists do that. And that's going to lead me to this. I cannot stand George Anastasia. I cannot stand Dave Ratweiser. If I had to be put in a room with either one of them for any length of time, I'd chew my own fucking face off. That's how much I fucking hate those two. I think that they're jerk-offs. I think they're liars. And I think that they just play it 80 different ways and hope they get it right the first time. They love guys like Ron Previty. Ron Previty's their favorite. I'm surprised they didn't have one big gangbang in a bed as much as they love rats. Ron Previty, John Vesey, and Philip Leonetti. I can go on and on and on about how much these guys love rats, but that leads me to what my real issue is. Listen, and I mean with this with all due respect. George Anastasia is an accredited author. Dave Ratweiser is a fucking, I think he's an Emmy-winning jerk-off. But here's my thing, is that when you are a journalist, you have a job, right? You got to cover the story. You're supposed to be impartial. Impartial means you cover it down the middle, to and for, right? That's what journalists do. Maybe not the way today's journalism is with the fake news and all this crazy bullshit that happens. But you're supposed to play it down the middle and not have an opinion. But it seems like these two always have an opinion. They always cover one side or the other. They always cover the side of rats for some fucking reason. They get their information from the FBI and try to lay it off on everybody on the streets. The information that they do get, I will give them credit. They're 80% pretty accurate on, but then totally fuck it on some of these things that they say. Not even close, not even remotely close. They allege that street guys are talking to them. And let me tell you the truth. If a street guy is talking to them and giving them information, that's a rat move. It's a rat move. A rat move. You can't get around that. That's a rat move. You're not supposed to talk to journalists. And here's the other thing. So if you're a journalist, like I said, you're supposed to cover it both ways. Be right down the middle with it. And they got a job to do. And I understand that. I can never hate them for doing their job. That's not what my issue is. And I get a little tired of people messaging me saying, well, you're just jealous. I got nothing to be jealous about. I don't write books about rats. I don't lie for rats. I don't make up lies about people. I certainly don't sit out of a social club with a video camera and put names, places, and titles on people. I certainly don't bring up 2 fucking murders and try to attach names to those. Then I don't turn around and try to sit back and say, well, we're not going to out a rat. Of course you're not, because you support them. That's one of my issues. The second issue is that when the Philip Narducci coverage started, obviously I jumped ahead, you beat everybody to it. But what was sickening to me is they do their mob talk shit down. And listen, people think that I watch their stuff. I really don't, because it's funny, because I'm noticing that my name continues to get fucking mentioned on their fucking stupid show. Not in their show, but in their little comments section. Because they're not men, and that's how they're going to react by doing it that way. They won't address me to my face. Dave Ratweiser sure as fuck wouldn't. And I know that little gremlin George Anastasia isn't going to address me at all. He already had his opportunity and didn't do it. So the fact that they do a show that is based on gossip and lies is fine. They're journalists. That's what they do. My issue isn't that I'm glad their show is a fucking success. But people need to realize they don't. They're getting their information from the feds and rats, okay? They support rats. They cover for rats. They've always done that, both of them. But it's the underhanded Geraldo Rivera type of shit that they do that's fucking vile. Why do they need a camera outside of Philip's house? Is that fucking necessary? Let Fox 29 go and do their bullshit. because that's reporting, but no, they have to like show the videos because they were there. Then on top of that, they got to go sit outside of Philip's restaurant and take more video shit. It's like, at what point are you like, it just, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Like, a lot of people can look at me and say, well, you talk about this, you talk about that, fine. I'm not going to have no arguments with you. But at some point, stop being such a fucking cocksucker, stop being such a fucking jerk off, and stop being such a grimy piece of shit. Stop putting names on and titles on people, because you're going to get them pinched. Do you guys really think that George Anastasia doesn't talk to the FBI? How do you fucking know that they were going to raid Philip's house? How'd they know? Did Mickey Mouse fucking call him? Did their psychic clairvoyant weirdo informant best friend in New Jersey call them? No. They knew from the FBI because they talked to the FBI. All right? That's the God's honest truth. That's how they found out about it. So they go out there and they film, and it's just like, it's repugnant. It's one thing to cover a story. It's another thing to cover a story and lie. It's another thing to cover a story and put names, places, and titles and murders on people that don't deserve it. Now, I'm not saying that when they talked about murders, they said, well, this guy likely did it and this guy. No. What I mean by that is they keep bringing this shit up. You think the FBI doesn't listen to their nonsense? You think the FBI doesn't follow George Anastasia's bullshit? You think the FBI doesn't watch Mob Talk shit down to get information? That's where they get it. That's why I'm so fucking insane with this. Because for starters, they're alleging that street guys are telling them information. All right, rat move. Second of all, if there are alleged street guys telling George Anastasia shit, where do you think that information's going to go? Wise ass. It's going to go right to the FBI's fucking ear because George is going to tell them. That's the fucking truth. That is the fucking truth. And so what? Maybe you try to spin a fucking narrative and you want it to go this way, you want it to go that way. I get it. I get it. To some extent, I get it. But anybody telling them anything like he's going to keep it a fucking secret is a joke. That fucker would drop the soap in 3 seconds with Tekashi 6ix9ine. Trust me. Trust me. George would be his bitch. And Ratweiser would be a bitch the second he walked in prison. That guy's got no scruples, he's got no respect, and he's got no fucking intelligence. And I know what you're going to say. He won an award. Hey, stick it up his ass. There used to be a time in this country, and I'm not abdicating violence. That's not where I'm going with this. There used to be a time where journalists knew where to fucking stick their nose, and it sure as hell wasn't up a gangster's ass. And yeah, so am I a part of that as well? Sure, absolutely. So for those that are going to come back and say, oh, you're a fucking hypocrite. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. There was a day that what I do, I would get fucking killed. Absolutely 100%. I cannot deny that. Can't deny it. But the problem that I have amongst personal issues with both of those jerk-offs is that where do you think they get their information? Somebody's talking to them, right? Why? Why? George Anastasia's not an imbecile. He knows the difference between bullshit and facts. Trust me. Dave Ratweiser, I don't think, could eat his fucking way out of a cracker box, to be honest with you. But that's what I'm angry at, is that these guys continuously levy their assertions onto people that have nothing to do with anything. Wasn't it just a month ago they said Philip Narducci is out of the mafia, doing his own thing, and he was doing his own thing, wasn't involved no more, he's a hardworking guy. But boy, as soon as he gets arrested, they want to change their narrative 360 like that. They don't even fucking hesitate. And God forbid you see anybody, I could picture it now, and this is just an example of sitting at Phillips and two guys walk out from the New York Mafia. Maybe they're in Philly just to fucking do whatever. And they come walking out the front door, and George and fucking Dave see them. You know what those headlines are going to be. Gambino family associates dining with Philip Narducci. That's what they do. No fucking truth to it, but that's what they do. They're gossip columnists. That's all it is. They get it right sometimes, absolutely. But the thing that just fucking aggravates me with these two fucking gremlin jerk-off fucks is that they have no balls, they have no respect for anybody, and they're going to put good people in prison because of their fucking mouths because they don't get shit right. And they got no compunction about that. You think they give a fuck if Joey Merlino goes to fucking prison? You think they give a fuck if Angelo Lutz or whoever else goes to fucking prison? They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. And they're going to tell the FBI everything. Where do you think the FBI gets their fucking information? They're not that bright. Trust me. And so that's where we're at. So if you enjoy George Anastasia and Dave Ratweiser, by all means, I invite you to go watch their shit. But no shit when you're getting served shit is what I'm saying to you. Do they know things? Sure, absolutely. I'm not like bashing them to the extent of saying that their knowledge is piss poor. But what I'm saying is you have a respect and a duty as a journalist, if you're going to call yourself that, to not call rats saints and friends and honest people, because they're all jerk-offs. And if you don't believe me, go back to a couple of their shows. Oh, Ron Previty. He's glorious. Ron Previty looked great in a sundress and a bikini top. I love feeding him frogs out of a jar. That's the way they are. They're not going to... And then they write books. This other asshole, Anastasia, has written books with rats who have lied. Every single thing these rats have said, one after the other, can be proven to be totally fucking false. You call yourself an author, do your fucking research. If you did your fucking research and you looked at case files, you looked at court transcripts, you would see what you are writing on a page is a fucking lie. And if you are going to lie in a book as a fucking author, then you will lie about everything else. You want to claim you're an intelligent guy. You've written several fucking books that have sold a lot of copies and made a lot of money, and you're going to lie. You're not even going to make a phone call and fucking have the prudence to even fucking ask another side of a story. Oh, well, I checked court transcripts. No, you fucking didn't, because A, B, C, D, and E through fucking page 5 and 12 is all fucking lies. Been proven to have been lies from 20 different people, from 20 different agencies. You're a fucking liar. And so, my point is, if he's going to lie to you throughout his books, he's going to lie to you about everything else. And how fair is it that this jerk-off, him and his little fucking bosom buddy, sit in a fucking news van taking pictures outside of an alleged social club, and this is Joey Tits McGee, this is Jimmy the Woman, and that's Mikey Tuna Fish Salad, and that guy is a capo, that guy is a fucking soldier, that guy's an associate. Why on God's fucking earth would you sit outside of a social club and do that? Let me ask you a question, and then I'm done. I'm fucking done. If I went to George Anastasia's house, or to Dave Schratweiser's house, and I sat outside with a camera, and I waited till they came out of their fucking house, and I said, oh, look, there he is, Dave Ratweiser, boyfriend of George Anastasia, likes to give him reach-arounds in the Atlantic City casino parking lot. How quick do you think the police would be there? How quick do you think that there would be a lawsuit against me? What would my bail be in that situation? That's the point I'm getting at. It's okay for them to do it, but not okay for anybody else to do it. And when you address them, or when you go to them like a man and you say, what the fuck is your problem? And they run from you. They run. They're fucking cowards. Fucking cowards. And the only thing that I want, the only thing I have wanted from day fucking one, I don't give a fuck what they do. Be a fucking man. Be a fucking man. Don't hide. And that's what they do. And the other part of it is, fine, you want to be a journalist, you got to report news, totally get it, I have no problem with that. Tell the fucking truth. And don't make assertions you can't fucking prove. Based on what? Based on what? Some transvestite crack whore you two banged in a fucking motel in fucking Secaucus? Come on. Based on what? What, your FBI intel? Oh yeah, because they have such great intel. They've been fucking guys in the ass 100 years, those FBI guys. So listen, that's the last I'm going to say of it. I'm tired of addressing those pukes, but it just pissed me off that, here they are in front of fucking Narducci's house. Leave the guy the fuck alone already. Leave him alone. Fine, you want to go cover his criminal trial? Fine, go do it. Don't sit outside the guy's house like a fucking stalker. You ought to be on that fucking show with Chris Hansen, the one where the fucking jerk-offs text the little girls and want to go over and play. Then they walk in and go, holy shit, it's Chris Hansen. To Catch a Predator. There you go. That's the fucking show. You're like stalkers on a whole nother fucking level. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. It is. It is. So fuck them. Fuck everything they're about. Fuck everything they do. And if you want to support them and you hate me, I don't listen. I don't give a fuck. I'll say, listen, if you don't think I won't say this to them, ask Dave what I said to him. I got no problem saying shit to them because I don't like it. There is a huge difference between what I do and what they do. Trust me. All right. So now that I've gotten that out of my system, because it's been eating at me for a couple of days, those that are now rolling their eyes and saying, why the fuck am I listening to this jerk-off talk? Well, here you go. Fast forward to the 25-minute mark and let it be done. But the minute that I stop fucking talking and helping my friends, forget it. It's over. Then I'm no longer me. That's just who I am. Fuck them. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to your Q&A, followed by Anthony Mirrà. Stay tuned on Mob Talk Radio. In my travels, I'm always looking for a clothing brand that I feel like represents me. Anybody can go to a store and buy a t-shirt with a gimmick, but if you believe in 3 core values like I do, loyalty, honor, and respect, then look no further than Omerta brand clothing. You can catch them at omertamia.com, OMERTA.MIA.com, with locations in Europe, California, Boston, Brooklyn, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Washington. They have a great clothing line with hats, shirts, sweatshirts, keychains, anything you might need, stickers. You want the rats to stop snitching? Go right out and get yourself a sticker. But if you want to live your life by the gentleman's code, look no further than Omerta brand clothing. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. We are going to get into the Q&A. Once again, as we always say, if I don't get to your question, it's probably because it's been asked 100 times before, or just time will not allow for me to get into details. I try to answer them as best as I can, but some of these questions can really get into like a whole smorgasbord of like fucking 50, 55, 56 ways to answer it. There's a lot of things to dive into. So if I don't get to your question, that's the reason why. You can follow us on Twitter at RealMobTalk7, and you can also check us out on Facebook at Mob Talk Radio. Okay, all that being said, let's jump right into the Q&A. Frank Calabrese appears to be playing games, saying he knows who killed Sam Giancana. So does the FBI, and it's someone you'd never expect. He said he'd finally reveal who did it, and when he did, then he names Tony Accardo. You don't need to have your ear to the street to know that the Big Tuna ordered it. What I want to know is who actually put in the work as a triggerman. Can you set this straight? I think I can set it straight a little bit. I cannot be 100%. Obviously, I wasn't there. I can only tell you what I've heard throughout the years. There's been many theories. Some claim Tony Spilotro did it. Some claim Dominic Blasi did it, who actually was with Sam Giancana earlier that night and was a suspect in that murder. I think probably in reality it was Spilotro and Blasi. Tony Spilotro was handed the assignment to kill him. But he probably wouldn't have been likely able to get that close to Giancana because Giancana didn't trust a lot of people. So I think he probably used Butch Blasi, Dominic Blasi, to sort of help him get into the house. Blasi's car was seen outside the house. And so there was a lot of different people that kept putting Blasi on that hit. The order, believe it or not, came from Santos Trafficante Jr., and the reason why is this comes right after the hit on Johnny Roselli, as Trafficante was really afraid that Giancana was going to open his mouth about the CIA, Castro, the Kennedy thing, and so that's one of the reasons why Roselli was hit, and Trafficante wanted Giancana gone as well, and obviously contacted Joe Iuppa and Tony Accardo, who were sort of working in tandem, and they agreed to the hit. Would have been permission from Chicago to get it done. So without Joe Iuppa and Tony Accardo, it wouldn't have gotten done, but there were reasons for it, and I think that Chicago wanted Giancana out for a long time, and it just sort of made sense, just like Johnny Roselli's death was carried out by the Trafficante crime family, I've always believed that Butch Blassie had something to do with this, and I also believe that Tony Spilatro, I don't think it was a single shooter. I really don't. I think two people were involved. I think multiple people were involved in it. Some have claimed there was a police sergeant, Meehan, who was involved in it. I don't think that's the case. I think Tony Spilatro was sent to handle it, but Spilatro couldn't get that close to Giancana. And so I think they used Butch Blassie as a front for that. And that's kind of the way I think it went down. Can I be 100%? Absolutely not, because I wasn't there. But that's the closest I think you're ever going to get to it. All right, top 5 Mafia books. The first 2 are by T.J. English. Havana Nocturne, which is about Luciano and Lansky making inroads into Cuba. The Westies, which is also by T.J. English, is about, obviously, the Westies and Hell's Kitchen. The Five Families by Selwyn Robb. For the Sins of My Father, which is about Roy DeMeo, written by Albert DeMeo, his son, and the Goodfella tapes. Those are my top 5. There's a ton of Mafia books you can get that are really good, but Havana Nocturne, the Westies, the Five Families, For the Sins of My Father, the Goodfella tapes, and also for Murder Incorporated to the PGA Tour, the remarkable untold story of Charlie the Bug Workman and his son PGA Pro Chuck Workman, and that is written by Chuck Workman with Peter Semino. Fantastic book. You're never going to find another book better than that. All right. Which drug operation was more lucrative, the Pizza Connection or the French Connection? Ooh, that's a tough one. Both were incredibly lucrative. I think probably the French Connection. They seem to have more of a worldwide sort of operation going on. I don't think either one of those could touch, say, Pablo Escobar or El Chapo. But of the two, I think the French Connection ultimately, at the end of the day, was the bigger powerhouse and more money involved, only because it dealt with more widespread area. But both the Pizza Connection and the French Connection used the same trafficking lines, the same trafficking routes that were established way back in the day. So there you go. And ultimately, out of the French Connection came the Pizza Connection. So they're not together, but they have a lot of similarities in the way that they were set up. All right, you know what makes me laugh? Billy Cotolo Jr. saying ratting was okay because they killed his father. How many people did his father kill? Didn't Senior tell him that was just part of the life? Listen, I've talked about Billy Cotolo Jr. before, and listen, here's what I can say. First of all, I am under no circumstances going to validate his bullshit, and I'm not going to validate him saying ratting's okay because they killed his father. What I will say is that put yourself in Billy's shoes, first of all. If he wasn't in the mob himself, then I don't know if I would have so much vitriol for him. He was in the mob. He knew the rules. He knew what he was up to, but he ratted on everybody because his dad got killed. There is some part of me that can understand, your father getting killed and you being upset and you thinking that, they shouldn't have had the right to do that. His father was this. So from the perspective of a son, I totally understand it. I totally understand how he would feel. But also he was in the life. He knew the rules. I think everybody that gets involved in that understands that at any point you could be killed, and that's reality. And so if it makes you laugh, it makes you laugh. But I think there's a lot of criticism you could give Billy Cotolo Jr. for taking his stance. Okay, he's upset that his father died. I totally get it. I can't really argue with him. But he's a rat, and his father was taken out for a lot of different reasons. And I just think he's sort of a hypocrite for trying to make his situation more imperative than others. And that's the reality. That's the reality. All right. Was Billy Cotolo Senior trying to muscle in on the top spot when he was hit, or was he hit for an old grudge from the war? Who was the highest ranking mob guy in New York City to be hit? Who was the last high-ranking mob guy in New York City to be hit? Obviously, Paul Castellano would have been the last major mob guy to be hit. And Bill Cotolo Sr. was killed because he was trying to take over. I've talked about that a million times. Billy Catolo Jr. does not like me talking about that. He's a rat. Don't care what he thinks. He has an opinion of his father that is jaded by being his son, and I totally get that, and I understand that. But Billy Catolo was trying to take over the Persico crime family. He got too big for his britches, and that was it. They cut his feet from under him and killed him, and that is the life. Whether or not people understand that or not, they only kill each other for the most part. And I think that if you're going to defend your father, you have to at least, and I think Billy has, to his own volition, admitted that the shit that his father did wasn't right. But I don't think he has any right to cry about it, and I don't think he has any right to say ratting's okay, considering that he was probably involved in some shit himself. So we're just going to leave that right there. All right, is Donald Trump good or bad for Cosa Nostra as compared to other presidents? I don't think Donald Trump helps them. I don't think he hurts them. I don't think you're going to be really hard pressed to really, other than like Richard Nixon and some other ones that sort of cut the mob a break a little bit. I don't think Donald Trump, one way or the other, has really any sway factor when it comes to organized crime today. I think, if anything, the fact that he does take on the FBI sort of brings light to a lot of FBI misconduct, and I think that helps because it takes sort of the focus off of organized crime a little bit, but it can also have the reverse effect. But I don't think either way Donald Trump has a lot to, unless he's going to outlaw fucking informants. If he outlaws informants, then that changes the game, but I don't think he's ever going to be able to do that. So I don't think really anything that he does, good or bad, is going to help them. All right, are you sick about people asking about Gene Gotti? People should just leave the man alone and enjoy his family. Yeah, I'm sick of hearing about it. I think a lot of people, listen, the Gotti name is a big fucking name in the mafia. It always has been, always will be. It's as big as Capone. And so people naturally, when Gene got out of prison, are going to make all kinds of assertions. But yeah, they should just leave him alone and move on. Listen, the days of the Gottis running the mob are over. They've been over since Senior went away. It's just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. All right. In your opinion, who's the most politically connected mobster of all time? Frank Costello, hands down. I don't think there's really anybody that ever had the political connections that he did. Maybe Carlos Marcello at one point could rival him. But I think reality is that Frank Costello is definitely, hands down, probably the biggest politically connected mobster of all time. And that's why they called him the prime minister. If it hadn't have been for Costello, there's a lot of things that wouldn't have gone the mob's way. So there you go. All right, Joe Pistone claimed to have knocked out and beat up mob associates for questioning whether he was a rat or not. In the same interview, he claims he could not commit acts of violence as a federal agent. Did he make the story of the fight up? Do you think he actually beat up people and broke legs? I've heard, I know the interview you're talking about with Joe Pistone. I've long been a proponent of saying that Joe Pistone broke laws as an FBI agent, laws that he should have been arrested for. I think that if you got to hold the FBI to a standard, right? And I think that he has tongue-in-cheeked it of, I played everything by the rules, did what I had to do, but then he turns around in another portion of an interview and says, but I broke legs, I sold drugs, I hit a guy, I did this. Well, and then he turns around on top of it and says, yeah, but if the FBI had known that then, boy, would I have been in trouble, but I'm not in the FBI now, so ha, 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 ha. And that's the thing. The other thing, too. So do I believe that? Sure, absolutely. I don't think Pistone, I think there is some bravado in that. But whether it really happened that way is something different. But no, I'm sure he did. But he also led to the death of several people. And that's the bigger thing that the FBI doesn't talk about, is based on what he did as a special agent, he got people killed. And granted, okay, there's an argument that they got themselves killed because they allowed an FBI agent to infiltrate, and I totally understand that and agree with that, but they knew what the mob was going to do, and yet they didn't arrest these guys to protect them off the streets. So they sort of just threw guys to the fucking wolves, full well knowing what was going to happen. And Pistone is responsible for that, regardless of what they're complicit in that. If you know a guy is going to get hit, you have to step in and do something. And they didn't, and there you go. The rest is fucking history. So as far as Pistone goes, do I believe that he was that much of a tough guy? No, not really. But do I believe he had to do certain shit to give the allure that he was with these guys? Absolutely. But I think that the minute he crossed that line or admitted to it, he should have definitely been arrested, at least at the minimum, for that, for admitting to it. But it is what it is. As the further along we go, the more we see that the FBI just kind of does what they want. They always have, and they always will. All right, can you think of a mob guy other than Paul Castellano who thinks of himself as a legit businessman? Specifically, no. I think Paul Castellano was a gangster in a lot of ways, but he wasn't a guy that was going to pick up a gun. Ordered people to be killed, absolutely. But were there any that just thought they were just straight up businessmen? I don't know. I really don't know off the top of my head who I could think of that ran his empire. Maybe Russell Buffalino. I don't think Russell Buffalino, first of all, was a legit business guy. He ran his family like a company, but he wouldn't hesitate to kill people either. So that's the same thing as Paul Castellano. So, but I think Paul had more of he fancied himself more like the owner of Purdue Chicken than he did somewhat of a gangster. So, and that's not to take anything away from Paul Castellano, because there was a gangster side to Paul, no doubt. But I don't think he's just the prototype that we go by. And I can't really think of anybody sort of other than him that would fit sort of that stereotype. Have you heard anything about the Bulger incident? Are they trying to put Freddie on state charges? I feel like there isn't much media coverage as I would have expected. Well, there's a reason why. The first reason why you haven't heard anything is because the Bulger family filed a billion, whatever the fuck it is, $1 million lawsuit against the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, because the Bulger family feels like it was a setup from the FBI. Bulger should have never been put in that wing of the prison. Bulger should have never been at Hazleton to begin with, because they essentially put Bulger with killers and mob guys who were going to kill him. And I think that the Bulger family's stance is that the FBI dropped the ball. Now there's stuff coming out that's saying that Whitey Bulger was about to out the FBI. He was about to out people to tell the people all about all of the misconduct. That's a theory, not proven. If you go back and you watch the United States of America versus Whitey Bulger, there's some good arguments either way for that case, depending on what your particular opinion is. But are they going to federally charge him? No, or state charge him? No, that's going to be a federal charge. He's going to be locked away he was already going to do the rest of his life in prison anyway. Now he's going to do it in solitary. But the reason why you're not getting a lot of coverage is because I think that there's all this rumor and innuendo about Whitey Bulger and a setup, and the fact that the Bulger family filed a wrongful death suit and all this kind of crazy shit. That's why you're not hearing anything. But I think that they're probably likely still investigating that to begin with. And believe me, if the FBI could tie in more gangsters to that, that's what they're going to do in a second. All right, is it true that the feds asked the mob for help on the Son of Sam shooting? To my knowledge, yes, they did. They did go to talk to certain people and ask them to keep their eyes out, keep their ears on the streets, and if they heard anything, to let them know. Wouldn't be the first time the feds have done that. They've done that many times. But it depends if there's some people that believe David Berkowitz didn't do that. So it's up to you to, if you're interested in the Son of Sam and David Berkowitz, to research that for yourself. I don't want to get into a conspiracy theory, but there are facts that sort of show he didn't do it, facts that show that he did do it, sort of like Albert DeSalvo being the Boston Strangler. They've already pretty much essentially proven he wasn't the Strangler, and yet the government doesn't want to back off of that, even though DNA proved otherwise, even though testimony proved otherwise. So it's just one of those things. Sometimes the government, the state, the city, they like to just keep it the way it is because quiet is better than noisy. But yeah, they did, but I cannot be specific about how much help. I think they just kind of just kept their eyes and ears to the ground, and that was that. All right, who would win in a hand-on-hand fight in their prime? Buddy McLean, Jimmy Burke, or Danny Green? Probably Danny Green. All three were very tough men. But Danny Green just, No quitting that guy. No quitting that guy at all. In fact, I did a show on Danny Green. Go through our playlist on YouTube, and you can check out Danny Green, and there's the whole story of him. All right. Who was Sam DeCavalcante's closest ally on the commission, and did he have any enemies? The Bonanno family was really, really close to him, but everybody else was an enemy. In fact, really, all of New York, in its own kind of little way, was on sort of an enemy territory. It's long been asserted that New Jersey has, first of all, you got to understand that the New York organized crime has a faction or representatives in New Jersey. All 5 families do. All right, all of them. So New Jersey has never really been a neutral territory all in and of itself. Back when Sam the plumber was boss of the New Jersey crime family, he had a lot of power and a lot of strength, but he didn't like really anybody specifically from the New York families. And I think that's a lot of it is because they were always trying to make inroads into Jersey. And I think he always felt like sort of the small fish in a big pond. That doesn't mean he didn't have power, doesn't mean he didn't have strength. He was a very tough guy. The problem is that I think New Jersey has always been subordinate to New York in a lot of different ways, just because of the amount of power that New York wields. It's just the reality of it. And I had read years ago something about Sam the plumber just absolutely fucking despising New York guys completely. He didn't feel like he got the respect he deserved. But then again, he wielded a shitload of power where he was. He wasn't going to tell anybody in New York what to do. But he moved outside of New Jersey a little bit as well, up into New England a little bit. He was very tight with the patriarchate crime family of Rhode Island. And so he did have allies in other areas, but I think at the end of the day, he was always sort of subject to, the square footage in Jersey, unfortunately. It's always kind of been like that. And now you look, especially Philadelphia's getting roads into Jersey now. The 5 families all got people in Jersey. So Jersey really isn't independent anymore. I mean, it is, but it isn't at the same time. Everybody's sort of got a piece of stuff going on. You can even go back to the Angelo Bruno days, where Angelo Bruno wouldn't let anybody in Philly sell drugs, but it was okay that the Cherry Hill Gambinos sold drugs. So it's okay for another crime family to make money selling drugs, but our own people can't. And so there's always this ebb and flow of that going on. All right. Is it true? Okay, no, we got that one. All right. Did Lucky Luciano and Joe Bonanno have separate drug operations, or were they working together? Totally separate drug operations, but Luciano's the one that really set up the trafficking lanes. Especially when Luciano had been selling drugs since the 20s, and he had operated and set up those shipping lanes a long time prior. He worked hand in hand with Sicilian mobsters to take care of that. Joe Bonanno used a little different shipping lanes. It wasn't the same trafficking routes, but no, they were not. They were definitely not hand in hand whatsoever. In fact, at one point, Bonanno wanted to kill Luciano. Bonanno also wanted to kill Tommy Lucchese and Carlo Gambino, so obviously they weren't working together than that. A more interesting question would have been, well, what was more profitable, Luciano or Bonanno? And I think Luciano really had the drug racket set up from day one, but eventually, as all things change, Bonanno would move his operations a little bit, then Carmine Galante would come around, and Genovese, and it just kind of got out of hand. All right. Do you know anything about the book Joey the Hitman? Yeah, I read the book a couple of years ago. I don't buy any of it. I believe I do know who it is, but I don't buy it. I think it's how to say this. It's entertaining. Certainly an entertaining book, but I think the reality is it's filled with a lot of problems factually. So if you're looking for an interesting book to read, an entertaining book, Joey the Hitman's not a bad book, but I don't think any of it's true. I think it's inflated, and I think that's just kind of the way that goes. All right. Why did Carmine Galante have such a hatred for Frank Costello and Carlo Gambino, considering he blew the doors off Costello's mausoleum and was pissed off that Gambino died while he was still in prison and wouldn't be able to make him suck his dick in Times Square? Okay. This goes back a long time, but essentially Costello had engineered Galante to do 20-year pinch for drug distribution. Also as well, Galante had fully supported the hit on Costello, which was arranged by Genovese and Gigante. Galante had also supported Joe Bonanno. and his garbage, which at the time Bonanno wanted to overthrow the commission, wanted to kill everybody. And Galante was just sort of subservient to Bonanno. And Costello also really, at the end of the day, was not a proponent of narcotics trafficking. He didn't like it. He thought that the mob's traditional rackets were better. It didn't mean that he would oppose it, but he just went along with it. And he felt that Galante was a little too happy to pull a trigger. Galante was a little too wild. And he thought that Galante was going to get everybody pinched. But it's sort of the same thing that Gambino and Costello used against Genovese. They got even with him, and they ended up getting even with Galante as well. He took a 20-year pinch, and eventually Galante would be killed. But it's just, if you go back to that time period, like everybody was like fucking everybody. That's just the way that the mob worked in those days. Because one of the big questions that I do get is, was this guy a rat? Was this guy a rat? Look at them. They were all dropping dimes on each other in those days. Not all of them, but Luciano did, Genovese did, Bonanno did. That's just the way that they operated. I'm not saying it's right, but it sort of drops that fucking myth that everybody's honorable, doesn't it? And that's reality. All right. Are the paintings available yet? No, they aren't available yet. And let me tell you why, sort of. Listen, we have them stocked. We have them ready. A lot of it was we were going to put the paintings onto the new website. I'm thinking now that we may not do that. And what we may do is just sell them outright. But I'm waiting for one or two things to come through before I can do that. But I will check on that, and I hope to have an answer on that in the next 2 weeks. As far as pricing and et cetera, it's going to depend on the size. We're going to have 10 or 12, 15, 20 different ones, different sizes. They're going to come probably in 2 different sizes. The price includes shipping and handling. I will take care of all of that. But they're great pieces. They're fantastic to put on your wall. We're gonna have Tony Salerno, John Gotti, Vito Genovese, Joey Merlino, I believe, anyway, and some other guys, and a couple of surprises that you wouldn't probably suspect. We are going to have one called the Commission, which is going to be all the guys on the Commission. It's going to be a huge 5-piece set, but everything will be relatively priced. It's not going to be too outrageously expensive or anything like that. But that's pretty much the way that's going to go. So I am hoping to sort of nail that down in the next 2 weeks. All right. Who was the biggest bootlegger of the 1920s? Probably the biggest was Bill McCoy. If you don't know who Bill McCoy is, look Bill McCoy up. He was really the guy that did it before everybody else. He's the one that set up the prototype for rum running through the Bahamas and etc. He is the original bootlegger of the 20s. He is the one that really taught everybody else how to get away with it. Luciano also had so did Costello, had a huge bootlegging enterprise. The Kennedy family, that's where the Kennedys got a lot of their money, from bootlegging and drug dealing, believe it or not. But probably the biggest one of the 20s has got to be Bill McCoy. Al Capone had a lot to do with it too, the Kennedys as well. But Bill McCoy, look up Bill McCoy, MCCOY. Look him up on Google, read all about him. He was an innovator. He installed a fucking machine gun on a sloop so that if anybody tried to fuck with this shit, he'd blow him up. That's a guy that you're not going to hear. Now, if you've ever heard the phrase, the real McCoy, that's where it comes from. This guy, Bill McCoy. So if you're interested about knowing who Bill McCoy was, look him up for yourself. I could do a whole entire show on Bill McCoy. Just an absolute innovator and made a killing and showed everybody else how to fucking do it, for sure. All right, do you think the indictment of Philip Narducci, is this a bigger sign of a huge indictment coming? In other words, do you think, considering this is a small case against Narducci, that they wanted him out of the way, or is this a sign that the FBI is grasping straws? First of all, if that's the only thing that the FBI can really put on somebody, that's not huge. It's extortion's a bad thing, but the reality is you're not killing nobody, you're not hurting nobody, whatever it is. Even though this indictment alleges physical threats and somebody being thrown up against a car, whatever nonsense bullshit. I think a huge indictment is coming. I really do, and I've said that for really 4 or 5 months now. And a lot of that was precipitated on watching the government effectively just give in on the fraud case with Merlino. Listen, the government just doesn't do that. They could have taken that back, especially when you look at the the jury count and what the final was. That would lend itself to believe that, okay, there's still going to be a mistrial. And yeah, true, Joey could gain more people on his side, which is reality of what I think would have actually happened. Or you play the fucking cards and maybe the government puts more on their side and they get a conviction. But the government just doesn't throw in a fucking case. They don't put millions of dollars into a fucking case, go on trial for fucking like 4 weeks just to throw it in the fucking garbage. They never do that. Not to at least retry it. And that was the interesting thing about the Merlino trial, was that even when the judge busted their balls, like, you guys said this is an open shut case, what the fuck? And they kind of pitter-pattered around, sort of told me that there was something else on the back burner. This Narducci thing could play out either way. I think, listen, I hate to see anybody go to prison. I don't want to see anybody go to prison. But at the end of the day, this, I think, is a smaller part of a bigger thing that is coming. Listen, I don't have any more information than that, other than that's what I keep hearing. And it's going to be all-encompassing. It's not going to be 3 or 4 people. It's going to be a lot of people. But I don't have inside information like that. I don't talk to the FBI. I don't talk to cops. That's just not my thing. But are they grasping at straws for extortion for 20 grand? Yeah, they're grasping at straws big time. But they want a conviction. I've said it a million times. The state and the fucking federal government work on fucking conviction rates. Such is the case if you look at the Merlino trial. They didn't mind losing the fraud on the other end of the deal because they still get a conviction rate. These guys get elected. The politics, they get voted in by their conviction rates. If you've ever seen a district attorney, say in a southern state, Florida, Virginia, South Carolina, Commonwealth states, the Commonwealth attorney is voted in by the public and by his constituents based on his conviction rate. If he's got an 85% conviction rate, what you don't realize is it's not that because he's going in and hammering motherfuckers and has got an open and shut case. No, 85, I would say out of 85%, probably 54% of that is plea bargaining. It's plea bargaining. They go in, they plead somebody out. That's a conviction rate for them. All right, so he pled out, but we still got a conviction on it. And that's sort of the way this works. The government works the same fucking way, the same exact way. But in this case, you know, I think this is going to lead to a bigger thing, but I'm not sure how big, because we're still not hearing anything about the New Jersey thing, which is a little creepy. Obviously, we have a fucking rat in the Narducci situation, which is just in and of itself a fucking joke. But we'll see how it plays along. This could get a lot worse, or it might just go away, and we'll see how that plays out. All right. While Philadelphia certainly isn't New York, why is it that they can wield such power from such a small area? There are going to be those that are going to disagree with that question. Listen, you cannot compare and contrast New York City to Philadelphia. Two different animals, two different beings, 5 families versus 1. But I'm going to tell you something that is a difference, and I've said this 100 times, is that when you take a core group that has known each other their whole lives, you can't break that. You cannot break that. Sure, anytime anything bad happens there, it's an outsider. It's never from within. It's an outsider. Unless it's the case of like Philip Leonetti or John Vesey or somebody in Ron Previty, that fat fuck. Those situations are something different. But you cannot, one, insulate yourself with people that have been together for 35, 40 years. You just can't. That's what makes it strong. That's what makes a bond strong. People know each other, have roots that go back, cousins, brothers, relatives, in-laws, for fucking 30 years. You can't beat that. That's why Philadelphia wields power. That's why Philadelphia is so strong, because it's family roots and it's a belief in each other. Sure, egos can get in the way of a lot of different things, but in this particular case, it's not so much ego as it is just bonds of knowing each other for 30 years, knowing that no matter what, this guy isn't going to say nothing. They got nothing to worry about. It's always an outsider that gets these guys pinched. It's not from within. But what is going to turn this on its head is if it comes from within. And if it comes from within, then you got a serious fucking problem. And the FBI knows this. That's why the FBI, every time they arrest somebody from Philly, they're trying to flip. They're trying to flip guys left and right. J.R. Rubio, outsider. Perfect example. Ron Previty, fucking outsider. John Vesey, a fucking outsider. To some extent. So that's why the FBI is always trying to flip these guys, because they know they can't get shit from inside. It's always outsiders. So now they're trying to get inside guys to flip. And I just don't think that that's... Look, if Philly hasn't done it by now, they're never going to do it. And that's what makes them strong, is they're a tight-knit group, and they just stick together. And that's the way it is. They insulate each other quite well, and that's the way the mafia should be run, in my opinion. But how long they're able to sort of keep doing that is anyone's guess. If you listen to Anastasia and dickhead Ratweiser, indictment's coming down tomorrow, 50 guys are going away, they're all ratting, every single one of them are rats. If you listen to them, that's what they say. But but that's my opinion. And listen, they're not New York. New York has 5 families and like a fucking 1,000 guys on the streets. Easy, 1,000, 1,500 guys total, compared to 70. There's a big difference. But when you're in a small area and you're concentrated and you're very tight-knit and very tight to begin with, it's hard to break that. All right. It seems like you try and justify murder and glorify the mafia every chance you get. Do you really glorify these men? If so, why? Listen, I've said it before. I've said it again. It seems like a lot of people are upset that I seem to be glorifying murder. Listen, there is 2 perspectives that you can have in life. You have what your normal 9-to-5 people go to work every day have a viewpoint on. Then there are people that grew up on the fringes of street life who see things from a different perspective. Can I justify a guy 2 blocks over murdering a guy another block over for no fucking reason? No, I can't justify murder. I've never been able to justify murder to anybody. However, in that sort of lifestyle, I understand it. There is a code that people live by. There's a belief that people live by. You don't hear things. You don't talk about things. You don't see things. No hear, no see, no touch, none of that. You don't see a fucking thing. You mind your business. You go the other way. If a guy tells another guy should he be killed, in my opinion, absolutely. There is a code you go by. I'm not saying I'm justifying it. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm not saying I'll do it. But what I'm saying is that if you join the Army and the Army tells you from day one, you are going to likely have to kill somebody at some point if we go to war. And you're going to have to do that for this country, and you're okay with that. Yes, I'm okay with that. So you take that situation, set that to the left. Put a guy who joins a street gang, a guy who joins the mob, whatever the case may be. He knows when he signs up, he may have to kill someone. But the difference is, it would be like the guy in the Army knowing that that's what his job description is, coming back and complaining that he had to do it, and then blaming everybody else for why he had to do it. So I think that there is just, from my perspective, it's like if everybody's going to tell on the teacher, right? Everybody should be down for telling on the teacher. Or another way to kind of look at it as, and I've used this reference before, 5 guys sit around a table, decide they're going to rob a bank. They all know what they're getting involved in. They need a 6th guy. They go to the 6th guy and say, you're just going to drive a car. Meanwhile, the 6th guy knows that all the other 5 guys, he knows what they do for a living. What, when they hand him a ski mask and say, get in the car and drive, he doesn't think anything bad's going to happen? So he gets in the car willingly because he wants to make money. He gets in the car, they pull up, they rob the fucking bank, they come running out with all the money. Then the guy gets caught because he's a fucking moron. And then he wants to tell on everybody and try to get himself out of it. How? You got in the car willingly. So my point is that if you're willing to join a criminal organization, you're going to have to do certain things. And in that life, it's justified. It's in that life, it's justified. I separate the difference between criminal organizations and normal day-to-day bullshit. No, I can't justify one of these little shithead creeps walking into a fucking bodega on the corner and shooting somebody for $50. I can't justify that for anything. But I can justify a guy who runs a criminal operation and a guy tells on him and he kills him. I can justify that all day long. There's a difference. There's a big difference. And I'm sorry if people think that I don't have any morality, but I can't justify what anybody does. I'm not in that life. I'm not from that life. That's just it. So I'm not really glorifying it. If you want to yell at somebody for glorifying it, go fucking stick your nose in Hollywood. Go bark at them. Go bark at them a little bit. Don't bark at me. I just do a fucking radio show. Nobody gives a fuck what my opinion is. All right. Now we're going to get to some hate mail. And these are 4 of the best ones I got. These are pretty good. Is it true you got arrested in 2001? Is it true you took it in the ass in prison? No. I didn't get arrested in 2001. I was arrested in 2000. And no, I didn't go to prison. Skip that. But if I took it in the ass in prison, I'm sure it was, I'm sure it was reciprocal with your father. I'm sure it was. All right, you are a lowlife. You've never met anybody in your life, and it's just a matter of time before real wise guys catch you in Philadelphia or New York, and then what? You're going to cry like your friend John Gotti Jr. One, I go to Philadelphia all the time. I consistently tweet out where I am, and the people that keep saying this shit, I know who they are. They're a bunch of fucking jerk-offs. I go everywhere, so what's stopping you from coming to meet me? What's to stop you? Are you going to cry like your friend? John Gotti Jr. is not my friend. I don't know why people keep saying that. He's not my friend. Read my fucking lips, hear what I'm saying to you. John Gotti Jr. is not my friend. He's not my friend. Have I defended him? Absolutely. From the same persecution that happens to a lot of other people. Is he my friend? No. No. Are you listening? Is it getting through to your fucking head? He is not. N-O-T, my friend. No reason for me. Why? Wouldn't it be better for me to lie and say he was my friend? Wouldn't that do more for my fucking ratings? He's not my friend. Bottom line. And nobody's going to touch me in Philadelphia. None of these little jabeeps that fucking run their mouth on the fucking internet are going to do anything to me. I'm there all the fucking time, 3 times a month. Where you been? Where you been? I'm there all the time. I'm very vocal about where I am. Nobody ever shows. So, I mean, it's kind of like everybody that keeps saying this to me, like, come on. Get with it and stop making assertions and bullshit invisible friendships that don't exist. I'm not friends with John Gotti Jr. I'm not. Bottom line, I'm not. All right. You talk all kinds of shit about George Anastasia, but he's an accomplished author. What have you ever done? What have you ever accomplished? Well, I didn't pass off syphilis from your mother or your sister. How about that? I talk shit about George Anastasia because I tell the truth. I don't give a fuck what he's an accomplished bullshit artist. He's an accomplished rat purveyor. He's an accomplished piece of shit. Yeah, did he sell books? Sure, absolutely. He sells books. Is he a good writer? Absolutely, but he writes for rats. So, what have I ever done? I do a fucking radio show nobody listens to. You think these fucking things bother me. It's the same 5 people that always say the same stupid shit. But listen, George does what he does. I do what I do. He doesn't like me. I don't fucking like him whatsoever. But I have accomplished not contracting syphilis from your mother, your father, your sister, your dog, your midget, whatever else, your housemaid, whatever the fuck you want to call it, jerk off. Oh, this is my favorite one of the bunch. And after this, I'm going to answer it, and we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Anthony Mirrà. Michael Francis recently said that you're a nobody and nobody listens to your show. While I agree your show is garbage, I have to admit people do listen to you. They find you intriguing. So my question is, why don't you confront Michael face to face and then see how tough you are? Okay, so I did see that Michael did run his mouth. I did see somebody sent me a copy of a tweet where he did say nobody listens to me. My show has no fan base. Well, yeah, to the guy running the Jesus scam. No, you're right. I don't have a base. Nothing can ever trump the Jesus scam. Jimmy Baker Jr. I can't touch him. So the second part of that is, why don't I confront Michael face to face and see how tough I am? What's he gonna do? Hit me with his fucking purse? Do you think that I am intimidated by Michael Francis? He's a rat. I've said this 100 fucking times. I don't give a... Listen, who his father is totally different. Sonny is a tough guy. This guy is weak. He's weak. He's weak. He's a nothing. He's a nobody. He sure as fuck isn't going to address me himself. Because I'm going to call him on him ratting. I'm going to call him on testifying. I'm going to call him on fucking giving up informants' names to the FBI. I'm going to call him on his lies about John Gotti Sr. I'm going to call him on his lies about the gas tax scheme. I'm going to call him on his lies on his jump for Jesus bullshit, the highest mob boss ever. I'm going to call him on his wealthiest mob boss ever bullshit. The guy's full of shit. He inflates his fucking ego. That's what it is. You think I'm not going to say this to that guy's face? Seriously? I've been saying it for years. Why would I stop now? His own father is trashing him now. There's another guy that's trashing him. These are people that know him for who he is at his core. So you don't have to listen to me. When his father says he's a fucking bum, there you go. There you go. So Michael can run his little fucking mouth at his little superhero friends on Twitter. Then he could go 5 John Corinthians 7 and stick it right up his fucking ass, because I don't give a shit. The Jesus stuff aside, he's got to make a racket. He's got to make his money. I get it. Calls himself God the Father. Go fuck yourself. You're a nothing. You're an absolute nothing. And I'll say that to him. Michael, if you want to reach out to me, believe me, I'll have you on my show. We can go toe to toe, and I'll let you know what the fuck you are right to your face. I have no problem with that. But somehow, I really don't think you're going to reach out to me. And even though you did once before asking me, what's your problem with me? I don't think you are, because I think you realize that even though I don't have any listeners, I think you realize that if you come on my show, what I'm going to do. And you're not going to have any way to explain that you're a rat. You're not going to have any way to get out of explaining why and how you testified against other people and how they got prison as a result. And you're definitely not going to be able to fucking explain to me that it was really Gaspipe Casso's scam and you just tried to shake somebody down. You can claim whatever you want at the end of the day. I don't give a fuck. But at the end of the day, listen, I'm not afraid of the guy. The guy's not going to say nothing to me because he doesn't want to get called on his bullshit. And that's what I do. I call people on the truth. And I've proved it A, B, C, D, and E, and F, G about Michael nonstop for months. People don't want to listen. Instead, they want to message him and go say that I'm saying this and that and the third about him and that I've been doing it for months and I have no listeners, But that's fine. At least I'm not playing the Jesus card and robbing Peter, Paul, to pay Mary. At least I'm not doing that, you prick. All right, all that being said, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to Anthony Mirra. In my travels, I'm always looking for a clothing brand that I feel like represents me. Anybody can go to a store and buy a t-shirt with a gimmick, but if you believe in 3 core values like I do, loyalty, honor, and respect, then look no further than Omerta brand clothing. You can catch them at omertamia.com, OMERTAMIA.com, with locations in Europe, California, Boston, Brooklyn, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Washington. They have a great clothing line with hats, shirts, sweatshirts, keychains, anything you might need, stickers. You want the rats to stop snitching? Go right out and get yourself a sticker. But if you want to live your life by the gentleman's code, look no further than Omerta brand clothing. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. We are going to get to Anthony Mirra in just 1 second, but I wanted to address one thing really quick. Not going to take long. I don't give a fuck what Michael Francis and half of these guys say. I really don't at the end of the day. I'm tired of addressing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm never going to stop defending people, never going to stop speaking my mind, but I am going to stop addressing idiots like Michael Francis and informants and stuff like that. It's not worth my time anymore. And I'd rather just do other things, but I'm never going to stop doing what I do. So for people that don't like that, I would prefer that I do other things. I'm sorry, but it's just reality. I'm going to do what I need to do. All right. All that being said, there is not a ton of information about Anthony Mirra, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to give you probably more than a lot of other people have, and so let's get right into it. Anthony Mirra was born July 18th, 1921 in Manhattan to Albert Mira and Millie Embarato in Manhattan. He was the nephew of Alfred Embarato, who was a captain in the Bonanos. He was an uncle to street soldier Joseph D'Amico and was cousins to Richard Cantarella and Frank Cantarella and Paul Cantarella, all Bonanno captains and all Bonanno-made guys. So his lineage was strong and his pedigree was absolutely insane. Mira grew up on the Lower East Side, which at the time was poverty-stricken. We've heard that a lot of times, especially with other guys, especially where he grew up in Knickerbocker Village. He would grow up with his relatives in the Mafia, would have close friendships with Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero. In fact, years later, Mira would have a luncheonette called the Bus Stop in Little Italy around the corner from Ruggiero's bar. Now, while they were somewhat close, Mira had some big-time personality defects, which we are going to talk about in this show. While his cousins were racketeering their asses off, including a major scheme at the New York Post Distribution Center. Behind their housing complex, Mira would move on to more lucrative enterprises. Mira would get his start, obviously underneath his relatives, but would begin working under Michael Zafrano, who was a Bonanno captain. Michael, also known on the streets as Mickey or Mickey Z, had a certain specialization, the porn industry. Michael would control the porn industry theaters, national porn film distribution centers, and owned several porn movie houses in Manhattan around the country. Back in the day when Manhattan had all sticky floors, if you know what I'm talking about. While a huge earner, Zafrano's strong suit was negotiations between disputing families, including settling disputes in Canada. He was, in other words, a go-to guy for when there were disputes. They would bring him in as a impartial person to listen, and he would help walk through that with people. Through Zafrano, Anthony Mirra would get involved in drug trafficking, extortion, gambling, bookmaking, and murder. It's alleged that Anthony Mirra killed over 40 people. In 1959, he killed Anthony Carfano and comedian Alan Drake's wife, Janice Hansen. Throughout his childhood, Mirra was bullied and beaten, and usually would end with Mirra stabbing somebody who was picking on him. He had no compunction about killing anybody, especially anybody who attempted to bully him. He allegedly had some sort of kinks. He was into casual relationship sex, but he was into group orgies, group sex, and some very other deviant things, which I'm really not going to go into. Just because it's it's fucking sick. I'm not gonna lie. On more than one occasion, he would beat women senseless. Mira was actually not close to his own family. He was, by most accounts, a recluse who avoided his own family except his mother, who he took to church every Sunday, but he would tell friends that he would not commit a crime a day before he was going to pick her up because he wanted to essentially not put bad juju on his mom. Despite the film Donnie Brasco, it was Anthony Mirra who first made contact with FBI Special Agent Joe Pistone. In the movie, Pistone meets Lefty Ruggiero, and that's sort of how that works. But in reality, it was the reverse. At the time, Pistone was working as an associate of the Colombo crime family. It was through Anthony Mirra that Lefty Ruggiero met Pistone. Ruggiero, impressed with Pistone, offered him a job handling his slot machine or vending machine routes, which is what Pistone had. This is how Pistone got into the Bonannos. Not long, the three became sort of friendly. Anthony Mirra would end up fleeing to New York after being indicted for drug trafficking. 3 months later, the FBI would catch up to Mirra, and he would be sent to federal prison for 8 years. When Mirra was released from prison, Pistone and Ruggiero had really become very close, and obviously Pistone was making Ruggiero a lot of money. And here is a misnomer. For some reason, when they did the movie, they made it seem like Ruggiero was like some slow guy who was like knocking over fucking parking meters. He didn't know how to make any money, and that's completely not true. Lefty Ruggiero was insanely a good earner, and he was a tough guy. This idea that he played like some slow, bumbling moron is just a complete and utter farce. That's not who Lefty Ruggiero was, but Hollywood's going to do what they're going to do. Anyway, so as Mira gets out of prison, he realizes that Pistone and Ruggiero are making a lot of money, and he felt like because he had met Pistone first and sort of brought him along, that he belonged to him and not Lefty Ruggiero, and it caused a huge rift and a lot of heat between Ruggiero and Anthony Mirra, but eventually they go to a sit-down, and the dispute was settled by basically Pistone getting handed over to Lefty Ruggiero. Not long after Zafrano dies, Anthony Mirra would take over his businesses. The porn companies were absorbed by Capo Cesar Bonaventure and handed to Mira to oversee. Bonaventure was cousins with Joe Bonanno and was the shooter in the Carmine Galante hit. And it's also worth noting that Bonaventure at the time was sort of involved in the Messino Capo hit issue, and we're going to go into that a little bit, but he had sided with Alphonse, Sonny Red and Delicato, Dominic Trinchera, and Philip Giacone, but at the last minute switched sides, likely saving his own life. Reality is, though, that if he hadn't switched sides and sort of dug his heels in, the Sicilian faction probably would have overtaken Rastelli's faction, neutralizing Rastelli and Messino. But, we're never going to know because it played out a different way. Messina would later get even with Bonaventure by having him killed in 1984 by Sal Vitale and Louis Anastasio. So Anthony Mirra, his real strong suit was muscling into bars and restaurants in Manhattan. He would get involved in vending machines, dealing joker poker machines, slot machines, peanut vending machines, pinball machines, and really controlled the ebb and flow of them throughout New York City. If you had a machine, chances are it belonged to Anthony Mirra. The slot machines, since they were illegal, would be installed in back rooms or in basements of establishments. The coin collection route was between $2,000 and $4,000 a week, depending on the location. And he would cut the owner in for a percentage. He would also get involved in shakedowns. He was a big-time shakedown guy, and he was actually collecting $5,000 a week in protection per establishment. So if he's got 15 or 20 establishments that he's cracking down on, he's getting $5,000 a week. So this guy is bringing in a lot of fucking money to the Bonanno crime family. In one particular case, he ripped off if he did not get the money from these people, he'd crack him over the head with a hammer, or in one particular case, he ripped the ear off a store owner and bit his nose off. This is a guy that wasn't going to fuck around. If you owed him money, you were going to pay. If you didn't pay, believe me, you were going to pay physically in every sense of the imagination. According to Joe Pistone, Mira was the nastiest person he ever met. While an undercover agent with the FBI, Mira was so irrational and so crazy, nobody really could get close to him, and everybody around him walked on eggshells. He was tight-lipped, but would only really talk about criminality. Pistone would go on to say that you could ask him about his mother, and one day he'd say okay, the next day he'd tell you to mind your fucking business. He was just kind of all over the place emotionally. Some days he would talk to people nice, other days he would threaten to chop their heads off. And you never really knew where you stood with Anthony Mirra, which is going to be one of his problems. Amongst his peers, they knew him as a knife guy. He wouldn't hesitate to stab somebody, and he actually enjoyed it. Mirra always carried the blade on him. Pistone was warned by other members that if he was going to get into a verbal argument with Anthony Mirra, to make sure he stood 10 feet away, because if he didn't, he would probably get stabbed without hesitation. Mirra wasn't well liked by anybody. They hated him for a million different reasons, but they tolerated his antics only because he made a lot of money for the mob. We've seen this before with guys that act a certain way. Most of the guys in the mob can't stand somebody, but because he's making money, he's untouchable. And this was the case with Anthony Mirra. He's a huge earner, and he busted his ass on the streets. He was making $5,000 a day plus for the family, and Mirra was also the type of guy, and the other reason why people didn't like him was he didn't keep a promise. What was good for him was good for him, and he would cheat people out of deals. He would cheat people out of profits. He wouldn't kick up as much money as he was making. And then he expected all of these other people in turn to give him shit for free. So if he walked into a bar and there was something that he wanted, he just expected he was going to get it for free, wasn't going to pay. And if you didn't give it to him, there was a way of dealing with that. He also had an issue with women. He beat them up, threatened to chop them up, and one time a girlfriend actually told him that she was a lesbian, and he went crazy, pulling her by her hair, breaking her eye socket, then threatening to cut her fucking head off. And so the opposite side of that is Lefty Ruggiero liked Anthony Mirra, but he kept him at arm's length. And the reason why he did was because Mirra abused fucking everybody. Mirra wouldn't hesitate to disrespect everyone within the mafia, insulting wives, girlfriends, children, others, and he would argue with everybody. Everyone wanted Mirra dead, but the problem was Mirra was a psychopath, and they knew that he would murder just as quickly. And the fact that he made a ton of money, everybody's getting a little kickback here and there from him, so it's like it's a situation where they're having a tough time. Nobody wants him around, but it's like the guy's making hardcore money. The mob's not about to give that up. People hated him so much that when it was revealed that Joe Pistone was an agent, Anthony Mirra went into hiding rather than try to defend himself or negotiate his own life, because he knew that nobody liked him in the mob and that anybody would take a shot at him, because now they had a legitimate reason to. In 1979, following the takeover by Rusty Rastelli, the faction divided. The Red Team, which was led by Sonny Red, Indelicato, Dominic Trinchera, and Phil Giacone, And then there was the black team, which was pretty much Sonny Black, Napolitano, Joey Massino, and Vito Rizzuto, believe it or not. Rizzuto was a captain in the Bonanos as well as a boss of his own family. A day prior to Massino pulling the coup to have Sonny Red and Dominic Trinchera and Phil Giacone killed, they basically, what had happened was Anthony Mirra had announced he was going to join the opposition, meaning the red team. So now you've got Anthony Mirra, who doesn't get along with anybody, can't keep his real mouth shut, can't stop insulting people, is now basically telling Rusty Rastelli to go fuck himself, and he's going to join the crew of Dominic Trinchera and Sonny Red and Delicato. So on May 5th of 1981, the day of the hit, Sonny Black called Anthony Mirra's uncle Albert and asked him to come down to the Motion Lounge for a sit-down. And the reason for the sit-down was basically that they didn't want Albert to get involved in the Three Capo hit. They wanted to just basically put everybody aside because there were rumors on the street that there were problems and there was going to be a war. And he just basically wanted to make sure that Albert didn't do anything. And that's basically what happened, is he sat there for hours, and it was done to ensure that Albert and his cousins would not get involved or interrupt the hit. After the hit was carried out, Albert was informed that the hit was done, and then he warned him what would happen if he stepped sideways. Because there was a lot of different, there were two different lines of factions here. And what Rusty Rastelli and Joey Massino were worried about was if they didn't sort of pull everybody sort of in line, it could really create a war, an internal war. It was already an internal beef. But after the hit was done, he was basically told, this is the deal. They're dead. We're in control now. You either get in line or you're going to go. And I think it was a way to sort of adversely sort of control Anthony Mirra. So when Pistones eventually found out, Sonny Black, Lefty, and Mira were marked for death by the Bonanno crime family. Mira went into hiding, and they knew how to lure him out. The only way you're going to lure Anthony Mirra out, the only way, is you got to use somebody they trusted. So what they did was they went to the one person that Anthony Mirra trusted, and that was his own cousin, Joseph D'Amico, who basically lures Mirra out into a parking garage on Northmore Street and West Street in Lower Manhattan. Mira, who had just been released from prison, was sort of keeping a low profile, not meeting with anybody. And basically, Mira and D'Amico went into the parking garage, climbed into Mira's car, and drove up to a locked security gate. Richard Cantarella, his uncle Albert Cantarella, watched from outside. D'Amico shot Mira in the head 6 or 7 times at point-blank range, basically exploding his fucking head. Mira would be discovered hours later by the NYPD, and basically his own relatives killed him, and they were contracted by Joey Massino, and the hit was in retaliation for the Joe Pistone shit. And rumors that he was also an informant, which the FBI put out on the streets in an effort to shake ground. Now, what I mean by that is that the FBI sort of went out of their way to, first of all, Sonny Black gets killed, right? They chopped off his fucking hands because he allowed Pistone in as well to shake the hands of made guys down in Florida. So Sonny Black gets killed. Okay, that's the first thing. Lefty Ruggiero was going to get killed for that as well, but he ended up going to prison, and because he went to prison, by the time he got out, it was done. Everybody was either gone or locked up and in prison, and that was over. But the fact that Anthony Mirra also was held responsible, and that's the sort of fucking irony, is that he goes to the higher-ups in the family and argues about having Joe Pistone with him because he found Joe Pistone and that's the way it worked, and then they gave him to Ruggiero. In some ways, doesn't get him a pass. It doesn't get him a pass anyway because he brought the fucker into the family to begin with. But something that he so vehemently argued for, it's just sort of ironic to me that Joe Pistone turns out the way that he turned out. In the case of Sonny Black was called to a meeting. He knew he was going to be killed, and he went anyway. He was old school, and that's just the way that certain guys did certain things. He knew he was going to get killed, didn't give a fuck. It is what it is, and that's it. Pistone could have stopped that one. He didn't. Pistone could have stopped the hit on fucking Anthony Mirra. He didn't stop that either. However, he did stop the Ruggiero one by getting the FBI to arrest him. That way he was saved. Anthony Mirra, in general, there's not a lot known by him, and I have a hard time taking, an incredibly hard time taking Joe Pistone's word for that, because I think Joe Pistone is full of shit. Anywhere you look online, you're not going to see really a lot on Anthony Mirra because a lot isn't known. And eventually there's going to be better books written that are going to come along that are going to be well written. But because he was so universally hated by so many different fucking people, I think it just lends itself to the fact that he was crazy, he was unstable. But let me tell you something about Anthony Mirra. He was an earner, an incredible earner. And I think that historically, he had a big part of how Joe Pistone even got near the Bonanos to begin with. And somebody had to be blamed. And the Bonanos have suffered because of that nonsense for a long time. The only thing that makes me sort of curious is why the FBI didn't just arrest Sonny Black to keep him alive. You want to flip somebody? That's how you flip them. Hey, they're going to kill you. We're taking you off the streets. We're going to protect you. And they didn't. And obviously over the years, Joe Pistone has gone back and forth on the allegations and the story. The story's changed a million times with Joe Pistone, so you're never really going to know. I think he broke laws. We talked about that earlier in the show, but I think that if you're going to compare Anthony Mirra to anybody, Joe Pesci, just complete psychopath, didn't care, great earner, but, unfortunately there's not a lot known about his childhood, other than some of the archetype things that we did talk about. There's not a lot of, and at 20 years old, he was pinched for this and he did this. There's not a lot of that out there. And so I sort of have to go off of a couple of court transcripts I was able to pick up and some other things. But by no means was he not a gangster. He straight up was a gangster, straight up was not a guy you wanted to fuck with. But, he's another fucking Tommy Patera, Roy DeMeo type. Didn't give a shit about anything. He wanted his money. And, once again, we see the mob is willing to let go of certain things as long as you're earning. And if you can't earn and you can't kill, they've got no use for you. And that just seems to be the way that Anthony Mirra went. Just the mere fact that Anthony Mirra spoke out against Rusty Rastelli, and that was enough to get him killed. And the fact that he was a sociopath was enough to get him killed. If you can't control... a good example would be Mad Sam DiStefano when he gets put on trial for murders. He is so fucking crazy and wild. He's sitting in court screaming all kinds of crazy shit. The mob didn't want to kill him because he was a gruesome killer for them. They utilized Mad Sam DiStefano. Who do you think Tony Spilatro? Sam DiStefano. So... the mob didn't want to kill DiStefano, but when he goes into court and he won't shut the fuck up and he's saying all these crazy fucking things, the mob really has no choice. Even if the guy's fucking nuts, they got no choice. He's got to go because who knows what the fuck he's going to say. That was part of the problem with Sam Giancana. They didn't know what the fuck he was going to say next. Not that he was nuts, but I think that Sam Giancana's ego was such that they weren't sure what the fuck he was capable of saying. Sort of like the Uncle Junior type of thing. And that's the only thing that would have made, I think, The Sopranos more accurate, as if Uncle Junior was killed because he went crazy. But considering what we are talking about is when Anthony Mirra is like outwardly saying he's on this side and that side, and he's a loose cannon to the extent that you don't know what the fuck he's going to do, and he's got a lot of enemies. I mean, it's just natural succession. I think that Joey Massino had to take care of business, get rid of the people. But then again, look at how all that ended too. Joey Massino indicted everybody, ratted on everybody. And it's just really strange how that all kind of worked itself out. Listen, Joe Pistone was the first FBI agent to really infiltrate himself. I think it was another guy, Jack Garcia, that did it. But I think Pistone's a little braggadocious, and I think Pistone has sort of made himself out to be a little bigger than he was. In the film Donnie Brasco, believe it or not, is not one of my favorite films. A lot of people love that film. I don't. I never really did. I think that they make Lefty Ruggiero look like a half a fucking retard. And it certainly was not accurate to the way things went down. The Captain hit was pretty good. But I just, for my money, it's not one of the better films. I don't know. Maybe it's just seeing Al Pacino playing like half a retard is the thing that bothers me. But I don't know. But that's sort of the story of Anthony Mirra, and I wish there was more to it. But there's really not a ton out there. So here's what we got planned for next week. We're going to do a really, really big Q&A. I'd like to do a whole show of a Q&A. But next week we are going to bring some some definite stuff in the fact of we're going to talk about some big name guys. And when I run into situations like this, and what I'm going to do for the future is, because I realized it today, is when I do shows on guys where there's not a ton of information that's really available, I'll do 2 for 1. That way we can kind of keep everybody shored up for at least an hour and a half. That's sort of how I like to do things. Definitely submit your questions for the Q&A. I'll put something out probably Wednesday or Thursday, and just underneath of it all, just write whatever questions or concerns or whatever it is you want on the Q&A. And you don't have to stick to just traditional shit like organized crime, biker gangs, Yakuza, whatever it is. I'll try to answer. I had a bit of Flanagan questions, but I'm not going to get to that at this point. After talking with the people that I am involved with the Flanagans, we're just not going to publicly say anything about a whole lot at this point for a lot of reasons. It's just I think people are just assuming a lot of things, and rather than just like play into that or answer their questions, we're just going to keep it to ourselves. But like casting calls and stuff like that will be coming out very, very soon. And that's that. What else now that I'm thinking about it? I think that's about it. So what we're going to do is next week we're going to come back with Q&A, all new subject. I am going to get to Detroit. Everybody's asking me about Detroit. I'm getting to Detroit. But what I'm doing is an entire history of Detroit. So we're talking like a four show thing, from the Purple Gang all the way to the tacos. It's going to be a huge thing, but it takes time for me to get it done. Any questions you may have, concerns, threats, hysteria, whatever the fuck it is, you know where to send them. And we're going to leave it at that. And we will be back probably next weekend, probably next Monday. I'm going to do it on Mondays from now on. It's just the way my schedule is set. But we're going to be back next Monday. If you have any suggestions and topics, feel free to message me at Twitter at RealMobTalk7, or to message me over on Mob Talk Radio on Facebook. And as usual, the only thing we ever ask you to do, even if you hate us, is just share the content. That is it. All that being said, we're going to be back next week with an all new show, all new topic. And we're going to talk about next week a live show. We are going to do a live show with live callers. So more information about that next week. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody have a pretty good week.